For years, people have had their chance to tell their side of the story. And now it's my turn. And now that everybody's on the record telling their side of the story, somebody needs to be able to connect all the dots with all that evidence that is the irrefutable statement of what actually transpired between me and the McMahons while I had my career in the WWF.
Welcome to the next century of wrestling news, commentary, and entertainment, presenting the truth to expose the lies and show you the full context of wrestling. Because there's two sides for many of these situations. Each Ultimate Truth Serum episode features content you won't hear anywhere else. So thank you for listening. Years ago, wrestling fans didn't need podcast hosts to say who to cheer for or why. So when fans saw Warrior become the World Wrestling Federation champion in 1990, there was never any doubt of his success. But today, wrestling fans are told to follow a new, false narrative that he could not carry the company, so they say Vince supposedly had to return the title to Hogan. And of course, many current fans buy into this fantasy, put forth by Bruce Pritchard and other haters who can't get over the fact that Warrior pinned Hogan cleanly. So they try their best to erase it or to convince fans it didn't happen. But it did. So for those who want the truth, we're here to show you the facts and numbers. Two things you won't ever get from Brucey. And it's okay if you haters shut this off now, because we know you were upset by the last episode, especially the part of the show when we said Warrior outdrew Hogan, which is hard for you to accept, but we will show you the proof anyway. Now, to set this whole thing up, Hogan told McMahon in 1988 that he wanted to be in movies. So it was then that Vince saw the potential of Warrior to replace Hogan in that spot, as it came to be in 1990 when they wrestled for it in WrestleMania. And here is Warrior telling how much it meant to be in that position, then what he thought about the situation.
Maybe a lot of the other people didn't look at it this way, and it sort of leaves me at odds with a lot of the talent that's out there today and wants to take every opportunity they can to criticize what I did in the business. It was a job. It was a goal for me to achieve, and every time I got in the ring or went to a town or every big pay-per-view, or it's about doing your job. Not just to have gotten to that place in my career as the Ultimate Warrior and had a match with Hulk Hogan, even if the finish was different, would have been something in itself. But the fact that the finish was the way it was, the fact that the chemistry was the way it was, that time in the history of sports entertainment, WWF, the way it was, that time, place in history. Hogan was the guy. He never dropped the belt that way, never dropped the belt. What drove me was being able to go out and perform and develop and evolve the Ultimate Warrior character.
The aftermath of such a great war, a war that the whole wrestling world witnessed, to challenge the Warriors that rode the Intercontinental Belt with the strength of the world title.
Warrior's title run began with many options for opponents and exciting situations with some of the top characters for him to face, including new matches with Perfect, Savage, or Earthquake. However, instead, they had Warrior end Perfect's undefeated streak before WrestleMania. Savage was taken completely out of the main event picture. Hogan got the high-profile feud with Earthquake, and Warrior was thrown into repetitive matches with Rude to offer fans nothing new to anticipate, except retreads of a past feud put in a cage. Warrior was put into tag team matches, and they updated the Survivor Series event to ensure Hogan was in the main event too, because that movie career never quite took off. So with Hogan refusing to leave, Warrior's time as champion was somewhat similar to what happened with Savage, and his run was cut short because there was no way the company could have Hogan without the belt for so long, which made sense and it was smart business. So while Pritchard likes to lie about it by saying Warrior lost money, it's not true. In fact, the company made money with him in that spot. The numbers tell the truth, and it's easy to see when you look at them. So here are the buy rates for each pay-per-view. SummerSlam in 1988 with Savage as champion sold 400,000 units. Then in 1989, when Hogan was the champion, 625,000 units. And when Warrior was the champion in 1990, it went to 507,000 units with the split main event, which is to be expected. However, with Hogan as the champion yet again in 1991, it went down even more to 405,000 units. The Survivor Series in 1988 with Savage as champion made 310,000 units. With Hogan as champion in 1989, 385,000 units. And in 1990 with Warrior as champion, it went up to 400,000, showing an increase. Then without Warrior in the company in 1991 and Hogan as champion, it went down to only 300,000. And that's a loss of 100,000. The Royal Rumble in 1989 with Savage as champion sold 165,000 units. Then it went up to 260,000 when Hogan had the title in 1990, and went way up to 440,000 units with Warrior as champion. That means it made almost twice as much when he was champion. Then in 1992, without him in the company, it went down to 260,000 again, so it's clear he was drawing huge for them. And what about WrestleMania? Well, Warrior and Hogan sold 560,000 units in 1990, but WrestleMania 7, with Hogan in the main event, fell to only 400,000. Then without Warrior's return promoted in 1992, it was 390,000. When you average the buy rates, it shows 3 out of the 4 pay-per-views went up with Warrior as the champion. And it shows increases for the company's revenue with him in that position. It also reveals that the company lost money whenever he wasn't there. So even without the high-profile feuds or matches, his title run made money and was a success.
But he's not going to put anybody over. He's not going to do that. He can't lose well. Warrior's not a good enough worker to know how to lose and protect himself.
JR takes the stupidity up a notch with that statement. Warrior knew exactly how to lose while putting other wrestlers over. WrestleMania 89. He puts Rude over to drop the IC title. Then in the next year's WrestleMania, he wins the world title with a clean pin over Hogan. Royal Rumble 91 saw the Warrior character showing the same resilience. Putting Slaughter over to drop that belt transitions to a huge win over Savage in a career-ending match at WrestleMania. And when you look at it closely, Warrior's success as champion was defined in those events. He and Hogan had the same match for them. They both wrestled Slaughter for the title, and it was a clear test to see who fans wanted to see more. So while it's practically unheard of for the Royal Rumble to outdraw WrestleMania, that's what happened that year. And it's only happened 2 other times in WWE history. But Warrior's match in the Royal Rumble with Slaughter sold 40,000 more of the pay-per-view units than Hogan's match in that year's WrestleMania. And as we pointed out, in that time period especially, the revenue and numbers for those pay-per-views were the most accurate way to measure the company's success. And the success of Warrior is shown in 1991 through the Royal Rumble. With him as champion, it nearly doubled the previous year's and the following year's revenue. So there's no way to deny he was helping the company in huge ways in that position, confirming the success of his title run.
It was a goal I set when I got into business to be able to succeed in it at its highest levels, and that was a statement that the Ultimate Warrior character had.
The goal Warrior set was achieved as his character continues to connect with fans of wrestling everywhere. If you haven't yet subscribed, please make sure you do that now, because Warrior returns next episode with another awesome response to an insecure and jealous hater. So we want you to hear everything, as it's shaping up to be a $1 million episode. And now you know who the hater is, but you have never heard this response before. So hit subscribe and share. And while we are on those topics, it was absolutely incredible to see how many of you watched the last episode, and how many of you took the time to leave comments. So we can't tell you how much we appreciate your support and what it means to be able to connect with you this way, because without you, none of this would be possible. And we want you to know you are the best part of these shows. And of course, You can email your questions or thoughts anytime at nextcenturywrestling@gmail.com, which is how you can tell us what sort of content you want to see. And that's important. So thank you so much for listening. We are always here to entertain you. We are Next Century Wrestling.